Hi Lana folks, it's Lev. Welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new, I use he, him pronouns. Today's video, I wanted to talk about systemic trans oppression and talk about some issues that trans people experience and whatnot, because next week, tomorrow, yes, Trans Awareness Week starts. So Trans Awareness Week is from November 13th to November 19th, and November 20th is Trans Day of Remembrance, which is a day to honor and remember the trans people and the trans and gender diverse lives that were lost due to transphobia and anti-trans violence. So this video I want to talk about systemic trans oppression and raise awareness, more awareness of the garbage that trans people go through, and just how the system itself is not very nice towards trans people. I want to start this video by saying that when I say trans, I mean trans and gender diverse people. So everyone is not just binary trans people like trans men and trans women. When I say trans, I mean trans and gender diverse folks. Trans, gender diverse, non-binary folks, all of us. And I'm just saying trans for short, but it includes all of us. Yeah. I want to start by explaining what I mean by what is systemic trans oppression. I forgot to say, I'm a trans guy, so if you don't know, I'm a trans guy, and that's how I have lived experience of being in this system and living in this system as a trans guy. So I'm a trans guy. Hi. Yes, I want to try and explain systemic trans oppression. So the way I conceptualize it is the system, the society that was built, the very foundations of it, everything is not designed with the consideration of trans and gender diverse people in mind. And I can see why back then, because the word like trans people weren't known of. I'm not saying trans people didn't exist. Trans people have existed for a very long time. It's just trans experiences weren't very known, and if they were known, not very much acknowledged or be allowed to be seen. It's just suppressed, pushed into the hole. You're different, something's wrong with you, and not really given light. Not really visible, not really given light, not really heard of. It's a whole different issue, but in terms of trans people in media, cis people controlling portrayals of trans people and depiction of trans people and what it is like to be trans and yada yada, is notorious for misrepresentation. Notorious for misrepresentation, notorious for not making trans people look awful, putting trans people in a bad light. Cis people in control of trans related media, just notorious for making us look awful and misrepresenting us and our experiences and everything. And even now that trans people are known of and it's more visible and there's more understanding of it, the system itself is very behind and still hasn't really updated itself to include trans people, to be inclusive of trans people, to acknowledge trans rights. And I'll go into depth with more examples of what I mean by this. But in general, it's the system, the society is not designed, is not built, is not set up with consideration for trans people, and it sort of puts us on the fringe. It's just like putting us on the fringe. It's like, yes, designed for cis people, and trans people can try and navigate this system on their own, and we don't really care about them because it's not really designed with trans people in mind, and just the existing state of things reinforces cisgender ideals and norms and all of this unhelpful stuff that I very much hate. The first example of systemic trans oppression is not recognizing gender. Legally, for example, right now, I am recognized as male. And there's no recognition of gender. I am a man, but I'm not male, because male implies cisgender. Male implies someone who's assigned male at birth. I am assigned female at birth, so that's actually incorrect, because my sex is female, my gender is man, not male, man, but I'm legally recognized as male, which is which doesn't recognize gender, but recognizes sex, which is wrong. And this is problematic, and it links in with the systemic trans oppression, because in the cisnormative world, sex and gender are the same thing. People sign male at birth, or males are men. People sign female at birth, or females are women. That's the binary. Male equals men, female equals women. And this doesn't work in the transgender diverse context, because I am female, but I'm a man, which are two different things. But the system doesn't recognize that, and just puts me in the category of male, which is wrong. And leading on this, there are countless times, like most of the forms I fill out request gender. It's like box for gender. But then when I open it, it's like a drop-down option. It's like male, female. There was one that said transgender, and I'm like, and then, yeah, it still asks for male, female under the category of gender, listing sex under gender, which again implies that, I mean, that the option of transgender in one of the responses was only for like one thing, but most of them request gender, have male, female, intersex. And I'm like, which again implies that male equals men, female equals woman, female equals woman, male equals man, and it's binary, and it doesn't include gender diverse or non-binary people. But even I am a binary trans guy, but it's still very off-putting and it's still off-putting and incorrect when it asks for gender, but then lists sex, because it again implies sex and gender are the same thing, which it's not, which is also, that's also a problem. And it also links to bathrooms, which I will get to. And just thinking, the reason I don't keep my legal sex as female is because people will see me as a woman. If they see F on my forms or under gender, and they see an F for female, they're gonna think I'm a woman. And that's also leads to a bunch of problems, because it's like they'll misgender me, and they'll be like, why do you look like a guy when you're like female? And it's like just having to explain myself, and just possible transphobia, discrimination, yada yada yada. It's just like, that's why even though male is incorrect in terms of my sex, in the context of this world, when people think male equals man, it works out for me as a binary trans guy, because at least they get half of it right. Second example of systemic trans oppression is the idea of binary, which links to the first point I made about, in the cis-normative context, man equals male and woman equals female. And I'm going to talk in the context of bathrooms. Public bathrooms are divided male, female. And once again, it links to what I said before with the ID stuff too. I'm not male, but I use the male restroom, because female implies woman, and I'm not using the woman's restroom because firstly, it gives me significant amounts of dysphoria. Secondly, it's just off for me, because I'm technically female, right? Therefore, I should be in that bathroom, right? Because I'm female, not male. But then it's just like, it again, with the whole recognizing sex thing and not recognizing gender in this whole context, and then the whole binary is normal and everyone must fit into male or female, is problematic. And this is what I mean by this, the whole setup of society is not very considerate of trans and gender diverse people. Firstly, the language use of male and female, and just keep referring to biological sex instead of gender, such as man, woman, non-binary, gender fluid, etc. Secondly, the conflict of trans and gender diverse people in terms of just having a basic right to safely pee and do our business in public bathrooms, because this conflict, shit, which bathroom? Like when I was first coming out, it's like there's people playing cricket over there, that's why they're screaming. When I first coming out, right, I wasn't on TV, my voice was high. I still use women's restroom because I was shit scared of using the male restroom. I'm using the words male and female intentionally here because of the binary and the way society is set up. I'm using these words intentionally. I used female bathroom even though it was very dysphoric, because I didn't feel safe using the male restroom, and there were like no gender neutral bathrooms. And then once I knew of places, when I went to places that have accessible bathrooms, I would continue to use accessible bathrooms instead of the binary male-female bathrooms. And then once I built more confidence, then I started using male restrooms, and now I keep using male restrooms and it's no problem. But this example of the whole setup is not very nice, and it's like society not recognizing the diversity of genders and how, again, sex doesn't define gender and sex does not equate to gender. Now that I'm thinking about it, literally a lot of these problems that I'm going to talk about is rooted in the idea of the binary, that you must fit into one of these two boxes, and anything else, any identity or who you are outside of these two boxes that we've built society around, as in man, woman, male, female, is wrong and invalid and shouldn't be recognized, and you shouldn't be treated as human, you shouldn't have equal rights because you don't fit into one of these two boxes, which is very fucked up actually. Third thing I can think of is also links to the binary is pronouns. Pronouns and assumptions of pronouns based on how one should look based on binary gender. It always comes back to the fucking binary of male and female. That's how the whole society was set up. That's how the entire thing was built upon. Division of... I feel like a broken record just talking about this again and again and again. Another problem is assuming pronouns based on how one looks and presents based on the binary. It's like if someone looks like a man, then the person should use he, him pronouns, right? If someone looks like a woman, whatever that means, according to the binary expectations, then the person should use she, her pronouns, right? And any other pronouns outside of he, him, she, her is just like void. It's like, whoa, why are you making up words and shit like that? Speaking of which, they, them pronouns. I've seen like posts online where people have a problem with they, them pronouns. Like, how can they, them pronouns be singular? You have used they, them pronouns. I have used they, them pronouns without realizing it. Before, like, you've used it before you even realized it. Someone drops something. For example, someone drops their phone. I'm saying there because I'm not gonna say someone dropped his/her phone. Someone dropped something, right? You will automatically say, oh, someone dropped their phone. You're not gonna be like, someone dropped his/her phone. You're not gonna do that. Automatically say, oh, someone dropped their phone. Someone dropped their wallet. Someone left the water bottle. Yeah. And when it's known of, and then when the pronoun they, them is associated with some trans and gender diverse people using it, and then people freak out and being like, ah. And to me, the people who aren't open to change and supportive of trans rights and trans inclusivity and trans awareness, even though us trans people living our lives does absolutely nothing to you and makes absolutely no difference of whether we live as whether we like us living our truths has absolutely no effect on your life. Yeah, people freak out, and to me those people are just wanting to keep the status quo. Keep the status quo of binary, what I know to be binary, because what I believe, people's own fears. People's own fears, wall here, I don't want to face this, so I start projecting my fears in the form of transphobia. I start projecting my fear out in the form of transphobia, in the form of prejudice, in the form of not liking other people being different, etc. It's just, I think of it as people just projecting their own insecurities, their own baggage that they need to work on, instead of blaming other people for everything and just hating everyone. Completely different issue, but like, just use that energy to work on yourself. Seriously, it will do you much better in the long run and in the short term. You just use the energy to work on yourself instead of project hate onto a marginalized group of people who living their own true lives have absolutely no effect on you. Just another thing I remember about pronouns, I've seen some posts online and people saying, pronouns are so hard to remember. I'm like, my question is, do you assume someone's name when you meet them? Do you assume someone's name? Do you make up a name for someone when you meet them? No, you're like, hey, what's your name? You don't assume someone's name, and you don't say, oh my God. Well, sometimes people's names are hard to remember, which is fair, but you can learn. Just like how I don't remember some people's names sometimes, I learn people's names and I remember over time. It's the same with pronouns. You learn people's pronouns and you remember it over time. Like the whole, it's too hard thing, it's just an excuse. It's an excuse because people don't want to put in the work, because people might be against trans people. It's an excuse. It's an excuse. Everyone is capable of learning. Everyone is capable of change. Everyone is capable of learning someone else's pronouns and remembering it. I'm not saying you can't make mistakes. I've accidentally misgendered people before. I've made mistakes too. As a trans person, I'm not immune to making mistakes. I've made mistakes and that's okay. But I'm not gonna be like, I don't wanna learn your pronouns because it's too damn hard, because I can't be fucked, because your pronouns are not important and I'm just gonna disrespect you. Like, using someone's correct pronouns is one basic sign of respect. And again, it's okay to make mistakes, but the excuse of, it's too hard is just utter garbage to me. And it just shows that people are just not supportive of trans people and willing to try. Another example of trans oppression is when people say like, you can be trans but you don't have to rub it in my face. It's the same. This is actually like an LGBT thing in general, but in this context I'm going to speak about trans experiences. Like people saying we're a bad influence, saying we can convert kids to be trans, learning about trans people, turns people trans, and in terms of gender affirming surgery, people just use words like chop off and you'll be X-gender. It's like if it was, for example, me, if I chop off my breast, then I become a man. And just awful language, and saying that and just complaining that trans and gender diverse people are like vocal and want to be heard and are like pressing to have equal rights and stuff like that. And people complaining that trans people are like being vocal, and why do we have Trans Awareness Week and stuff, like have days specific to us? Like it's like sort of when we have gay pride, people or straight people are like, why do we have straight pride and stuff like that? It's because you're not in a press group. It's because you have privilege. Trans people have Trans Awareness Week, Trans Day of Visibility, Trans Day of Remembrance, all of these important events because we don't have equal rights. We're not treated equally. We don't have the same privilege as cisgender people. That's why we have to keep being vocal, because no one's listening to us. No one's taking us seriously. Change is like a turtle's pace, because trans people aren't in power and cis people don't really seem to give a damn about creating change for trans people. That's why we keep having to be vocal, because we're not getting what we want. We're not being heard. We're not being treated as human beings. We don't have all our basic rights. That's why. And cisgender people who already have privilege complaining about why they don't have certain days, it's like, are you serious? Just look, I'm just getting annoyed now, but like, look at your own privilege. You have so much privilege. Everything is already, the system is already built to favor you. The society we set up, the spaces, everything is already set up for you, inclusive of you, considerate of you. Unlike trans and gender diverse people, which I have a next point which I'm going to get to. The next point is children being born into this world, into a very cis normative world, and where the system is built up with the idea of binary and men equals male and female equals woman again. Kids being born into this world and then learning through everything, learning through media, learning through parents, learning through schools, learning through peers, learning through everywhere they go. I'll get into like what I mean by everywhere they go, including shops, that binary is normal. And then if you're assigned female birth, you're a girl. If you're assigned male birth, you're a boy. And you are this gender. And you must act in the way that fits this box. You must dress in the way that fits into this box. You must basically live your life according to the list of expectations for your gender over here. And kids learn that, even though they might not know the language for it yet, that being why did I say it like that? Being cisgender is so-called normal, and all other gender identities are abnormal. And this also includes the lack of representation in mainstream media. Again, where most trans depictions controlled by cis people are notorious for misrepresentation. And just not seeing, like growing up, I want to say, use myself as an example, growing up, I believe that the only cis people existed until I was 20 or early 20s, yeah. I believe that only cis people existed. When I was growing up, I didn't see any trans representation, was not really talked about. I didn't know about it, it was like, did not see it anywhere, did not hear it anywhere. It was basically non-existent to me. And then when I learned it in my early 20s that, hey, trans people exist, and that, oh, these are what trans experiences are like, and oh, shit, I relate to this, I got petrified, because I know I'm different. By that point, I'm like, I'm different. I live in this world, and I'm different. Well, fuck. And one specific example I can think of where the whole binary is ingrained into kids is when kids ask, are you a boy or a girl? That's binary genders. There's two genders. That's binary, that fits the system. And it's reinforced by the system. Do kids ask, what is your gender? Not really. Usually ask, are you a boy or girl? Another example is gender reveal parties. I hate gender reveal parties unless it's it's transgender diverse people taking it and being like, hey, I'm bored, this is my actual gender, then that's cool. Cis people throwing gender reveal parties reinforces, once again, I keep going back to this because the binary is the root of the problem of all of this. Cis people throwing gender reveal parties reinforces the binary because, hey, blue is for boys, pink is for girls, and no other gender identity exists. And I touched on shops before, but even in shops, it reinforces the system and it oppresses trans people because clothes section, toy section, men's, women's, boy, girl. Again, with the whole fucking binary. And like, it's not very inclusive of trans people. For example, I used to wear bras before I got top surgery. And if I went to the women's section to look at bras, if I went to the women's section to look at bras, because I am assigned female birth and before top surgery I had breasts. If I went to the women's section, I need to buy a bra, like genuinely needed to buy one to wear. People will look at me like I'm a creep because I'm a guy in the women's section. They're like, the fuck is this guy doing in the women's section? He must be a creep. It's not very inclusive. Luckily I had bras to wear and I didn't have to go buy some, but like, for example, if I had to, it's not very nice because people see me as a guy in the women's section. And that's not how, that doesn't fit the binary. It's like, oh fuck the binary, oh error. Trans guy in the women's section, shit. Oh no, it doesn't fit any, he doesn't fit any of the boxes. Oh no, what do we do? System overload, fuck. Like, because the system's not designed for us. And yeah, sort of like, could also be the same for people assigned male at birth who are trans feminine, who may not look like a typical woman. I'm doing this in quotations because there is no one way to be a woman or a man or any gender. There's no one way to be it. There's no one look that defines the gender. That's why I do this, because I'm annoyed. People assign male at birth who are trans feminine, who may not look like a typical woman, who needs to buy stuff in the women's section, might also come off as creepy to cis people because like, why is this person in this section? See, just even that, the whole setup of it is systemic trans oppression. And same with the toy section for young people. It's like, boys learn, okay, I'm a boy, therefore I must only play with these toys. Oh, I'm a girl, I must only touch these toys. It's like, clothes are clothes, toys are toys. Don't gender it. Just put like an underwear section or like a bra section or like a brief section. Just like, don't gender it. And like, even like soap is gendered. Like, soap is fucking gendered. Like, there's like, for men, soap for men. I'm like, why? Just, why gender soap? It's soap, anyone can use it. I don't, basically de-gender stuff. That makes trans and gender diverse people's lives easier. It makes accessing shopping more inclusive for us. Oh no, it throws off the fucking cis binary system, but I don't care. It doesn't make a difference. It's like, okay, if you need underwear, you go to the underwear section. If you need t-shirts, you go to the t-shirt section. If you need shorts, you go to the shorts section. Or an assortment of shorts. Women's shorts, men's shorts, or in the shorts section. You can buy whatever shorts you want. You can buy whatever t-shirts you want. You can buy whatever tank tops you want. Degendered. You can just shop freely, buy whatever you want. And I shouldn't be doing that because I got top surgery like 3 weeks ago, but I'm annoyed, so. The other examples of systemic trans oppression include having to go through a rigorous process to get our gender recognized in the form of sex, which I mentioned at the start, which is a whole other problem, but tedious process to have our gender and gender recognized, our name recognized, our chosen name recognized, having to go through 10 million hoops to get medical transition support, having to prove we're trans and that we have dysphoria. Basically, another problem is having to prove we're trans to get stuff we need, because it's a lot of explaining, a lot of proving ourselves, it's a lot of proving ourselves to cis people, because they run the show, they make the rules, and we just have to jump through the hoops, and we don't have control over the rules, the regulations, and what we need to go through to get what we need. A completely different thing that relates to trans systemic oppression too is tokenism. I really can't stand it when organizations, people, and mostly organizations, from my experience, from what I see, is, for example, have pride flags, have trans flags on their websites, on their social medias, but they give fuck all about actually supporting the community. In this context, I'm going to talk about the trans context. So trans flags on websites, trans flags on social media, trans flags in email signatures. Yet, one funny thing is, I have seen people with trans flags in their email signatures, but no pronouns. That is a sign to me of tokenism and trying to appear. It's like, yes, you want to look trans friendly by having a fucking trans flag there, but you don't even have pronouns in your email signature. So I'm like, why did you put the trans flag in your email signature if you don't even have pronouns in it, for example? And I'm like, they're all trying to make themselves look like they're trans friendly, yet behind the scenes probably doesn't do anything. And this is like LGBT in general, but I thought it was also important to mention, like having pride flags, but in general. But then when it comes to Ida Hobart, which is International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Transphobia, when it comes to Ida Hobart or Trans Awareness Week or Trans Day of Visibility or the LGBT events and awareness days and whatnot, no acknowledgement on social media, no post whatsoever, yet there is a flag there. I'm like, don't put the fucking flag there if you don't give any fucks. It's that simple. Don't put the flag there if you don't give any fucks. If you put the flag there, actually show some initiative that you care. Otherwise, don't abuse the flag like that. Don't just put it there to make it look like you care, but you don't. That really bugs me. And I pick up on it really easily. It's like discrepancy. I pick up on it. I pick up on it really well. Like I mentioned, for example, trans flag in email signature, yet no pronouns. Very clear divergence. This video, I'm pretty sure, has gone on very long already, but and there's like so many more examples, but I don't think I'm going to remember every single one at this point in time. No, I'm going to put every single one in this video, because it's going to be like a 5-hour video if I think of every single one and like put the whole thing together. But another example is lack of safe spaces for trans and gender diverse people to go to. I'm not saying that trans people can't and don't go to cisgender run events, as in events run by cisgender people. It's just the sheer lack of trans events is already a sign that we are a marginalized group and we are not seen enough, and there's just basically scarcity out there for us. But when it comes to more outer areas further from Melbourne, especially regional and rural, there's like extreme scarcity. It's like trying to find something in a vast desert that's just full of sand, and you're just trying to find something trans that you can hold on to, like something, a group, a community, just like trying to find something in a vast desert full of sand, just trying to find something. That's what it's like. It's already lacking in Melbourne, like there needs to be more, but when it comes to further out in rural areas, very, very, very scarce. So that's all I had for this video. This is not an exhaustive list. Like, I have not spoken about or listed every single example of trans systemic oppression in society, but because there's a lot and I can't remember anymore right now, but even if I did, I probably wouldn't put it in this video because it's very long already. It's not everything, and I did feel annoyed and infuriated when I was talking about some stuff, and it is infuriating because I don't have power to change it. The trans community don't have much power to change it because most of the power in society are held by cisgender people. Most of them are cisgender, and there's not enough trans people in power. That's why change is also like a turtle, because us as trans people know what we want. We know what we want. We know what we need. Yet the process of turning this sometimes very seemingly simple idea into reality is very hard because of the cis people in power being against it and pushing us backwards. Yeah, that's all for this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and if you took something away from this video, or gained some insight, something from it, I'm happy. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.